Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I think I was quite well introduced as well here. But I also thought, before I start the presentation, just a few words from my side. That's always about the personal stories. So just a few things. I started Grupa Pracuj in year 2000. We are celebrating 25 years this year. So quarter of a century, it's kind of impressive. On the other side, depressive with the age going on. But it was a great journey for all of us. Along the growth, I also started investing in different tech ventures. I think some of the names like Preply, DocPlanner, Booksy, and others were mentioned here. I also had the privilege to become the Entrepreneur of the Year in Poland in the UI contest and representing Poland in Monaco last year in May. So this is let's say, the business life of my side. On the other hand, my big hobby is sailing. I sail. I don't know. Are there any sailors here? Raise your hand. Okay. So there is basically like a few options for sailing. One of them is cruise. Then you can do some long haul sailing. So I compete in some regattas, and we actually compete in the class 5.5 with a few of my colleagues. And I would say we are doing quite well, keeping in mind that we started sailing together just 5 years ago. And also, apart from that, I actually, in the last 15 years, I spent 5 years living in Italy, 5 years in Germany. Anyone from Germany here or Italy? No? Nobody? Okay. But this is actually the countries I fell in love with. So, talking about the whole presentation, I thought I will give you a little bit of history of Grupa Pracuj, but also parallel to how the VC ecosystem was changing here. Because as you can imagine, it's very different right now in 2025 to raise some funds comparing to what was happening in year 2000. Anyone is looking for some round right now, maybe? Some of you? Okay, we have two people here. All right, so, the one question which some people might ask is, who can become or who can build the unicorn? We're probably one of the first one in Poland. And there was an actual Endeavor did some research on that. The research was done in the US, where obviously there is more unicorns. And ideas of what can be the criteria for that? Who has more chances to create the unicorns? Chance and determination, okay. Anything else? Timing, of course. What about education? Do we need education or not? Proper education, more economic, more engineering. Any thoughts? Sorry? International teams, let's say, maybe living abroad. So, that's, when you look at the profile, this is actually, I found it quite interesting. And obviously, I look at myself as well, and each of you can apply it to yourself. So what it says is that 60% of the founders studied or worked abroad. I was actually, after I graduated from the University of Warsaw, I was studying here in Warsaw. I went to work abroad for PwC, which I will mention later. In terms of the career path, I don't know, probably PwC is one of the lead employers. It was quite early years. I didn't have any, let's say, experience before, except that I was running a student-run organization called ISEC. And actually, I remember this place in this room here, because in 1996, we organized like a huge career fairs for probably like 200 or 300 companies. It was called Organizing Committee President, lots of booths around. So in some way, I can say that 30 years later, I'm back at the same place. So I had some experience, not necessarily from the business. And in terms of the education, I think I was in minority. I was studying economics. So I would say, is economics business? Not really. But I'm not surprised that the majority of the people here would say that they were studying, they were graduating from the technical schools. And that was also one of the first questions which was asked when I started Grupa Pracuj. Am I able to code anything? And 25 years I said no, and 25 years later I can also say the same. No, I cannot. But still, we managed to grow the company. And for those of you who don't know, maybe a little bit about the history. But I wanted to ask, who of you have heard about Grupa Pracuj? Can you raise your hand? Okay, so maybe who didn't hear? Okay, interesting. So probably you know something, but maybe you don't know the background, which I always find probably the most fascinating. So whenever I buy some books, I am probably more interested in how Amazon was started, Monster.com, eBay, etc. Not necessarily going into all these kind of complicated processes and structures afterwards. So how did it start? I mentioned that after graduating from the university, I went to work for PwC, actually in London, which it was October 1999. I still remember I was leaving Poland with one pair of shoes with the holes because I couldn't afford anything else. Working for the students' organization is a great experience, but it doesn't give you much money. So I was kind of, maybe not broke, but I had no available funds. I went there, and after a few months, I just realized that probably working for the big multinational is not for me. And I had this idea to become an entrepreneur and set up my own business. The main problem was that I had no clue what kind of business I should open. But that's where London comes in, because this is, I think, it's one of the most creative places I've ever been to. So as you can imagine, I was driving the subway, talking to lots of friends, making the friendships, talking to other people, and trying to understand where the idea could come from. Also, to give you the background, it was, year 2000. Do you remember when there was this internet bubble which kind of burst, and actually at the peak of the Nasdaq, I think, was March 2000. So that was the moment when we had the idea already. We knew that we want to do it, but I would say that the macroeconomics were not really supportive of that, especially as we had no experience. One day I was going, maybe it's an idea for some of you. So one day I was actually going around, and I went to the place called W.H. Smith, and I noticed a book called On Courses, as you can see here. And this book happened to be like super important in my life, because I opened it. I wanted to learn Spanish at that time. But actually, after opening the book, I just realized, maybe I should not learn Spanish. Actually, I like the publication itself. It was a list, basically the listing about different courses, about anything, English, Spanish, business, management, organized in London. So what I did next day, I went back to the office. I did a cold call. So I dialed the number there. There were two publishers. Anyone from UK here, perhaps? Okay, one person. So there were actually two publishers, Mike Elms and Jeremy Hunt, and they basically became my first partners. So I liked the idea, they showed me around, and they also showed me that they do not only have the educational business, but also they have the careers business. So they had a publication with the employer profiles addressed to the students and graduates, and also on the side they had a website called givemeajob.co.uk. And without further saying, I thought, okay, education is great, but I understand the employers better, especially as when I was working for the Students' Union, we had lots of companies being our partners. So I already had some accountability, some credibility when speaking with them. By the way, the same guy, Jeremy Hunt, later he went to the British government. He changed his career from business into the politics, and he was the last finance minister of the UK. So it's also like a very interesting example of how you can combine the business experience with the political one. So going further to us. So I showed you this On Courses publication, and here you can see our first one called Pracodawcy, employers. There were 7 employer profiles, which we are working very hard to get in. And believe me, in year 2000, when you went to any employer and you said, this is the publication, this is the internet, I mean, everyone was asking, what is the internet? I mean, nobody was using that. Maybe students. So, students knew, and probably there was, I think the internet penetration in Poland was about 10%. And this is basically how we started. For the first 3-4 years, majority of the revenues were coming from the publications, but we somehow believed that, doing this, the internet, this small website, this is the future. The company was small, and also maybe giving a little bit of background, because I think most of you do not remember that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the financing of the business. And the truth is that in the year 2000, there was almost no financing. So the internet bubble exploded. There were no money on the market. I still remember I went to the free banks because I had no other contacts. I was studying economics, but let's say finance was not my biggest strength. So any meeting actually which I had ended up with the kind of profit and loss statement asking me why there is some kind of small difference of 1 or 2 zlotys. So probably I was talking to the accountants rather than to the business people. So they said no way, there was no option to get any money from them. And that was also, when you look at the ecosystem, most of these companies here are on the left side you have, of course, Pracuj.pl, you have a few other websites. Gadu, anyone remembers here? Raise your hand. Okay, most of you, fantastic. Does it still exist, by the way? No, probably not. Okay. Okay, all right. So, but I think Bankier is still here. Merlin, does it exist? No, yes, no? Okay, we don't know. You can Google maybe. But actually, it was quite interesting. When I was preparing the presentation, there was no really proper financing in Poland. And if you look at the biggest portals, they were usually the spin-off of the different telecommunication companies. Only the Onet, the second one on the right, was set up by Roman Kluska and later on sold to the ITI. So there wasn't this kind of traditional vehicle or investors in Poland in year 2000, probably early 2000s yet. There were a few ventures, like some of you might remember Arena, which was trying to go public, but they didn't succeed, so they went bankrupt very quickly. But that was the reality of how the business was conducted. And we had no choice. Basically, for the first year, we had to bootstrap the business. There is a very good book of Professor John Mullins from the London Business School. The book title is Customer-Funded Businesses. And so we are basically the business which was selling some kind of promise advertising in the publications, in the internet. And this is how we founded the first, let's say, year of our existence of the company. Then, we tried to dig more into the ecosystem. And honestly, I'm not sure whether this data is right, and I will explain you why in a moment. So this is the data we got from Polski Fundusz Rozwoju and Atomico, showing, what were the rounds in Poland and the super rounds. So what does it say? It says that, this GDP invested in tech in the last 10 years was actually quite low comparing to the US. 3,000 startups versus 40,000 in the UK. Very few mega rounds, which were driving the business forward. Public funds also, quite available. And for the VC partners, and I'm also, let's say, the limited partner of a few of them, these are usually the people who are just, opening their first funds. Some of them did well, some of them not necessarily. And I think this is everything about learning, which we also realized with Grupa Pracuj, because we are also like the first-time founders, but nobody has done it before. And we are just learning and faster than anyone else. So, talking about the growth story, how it went on. As this is, let's say, just the key, milestones for the group. So, as I said, we started in year 2000 with Pracuj.pl, which initially was as I said, like a website for students and graduates. I was lucky enough to get actually finally the investor. We got $200,000 US investment in 2001 from a company called Catalyst. And I had my first mentor, James Van Berg. Later on, he opened another company which is listed in Poland called Benefit Systems. Anyone has multi-sport card? Okay, so this is pretty much the same. So, James, he's a brilliant guy. And, for me as a guy in his late 20s, having someone older by 10 years with Harvard education was like a game changer. And he was helping me quite a lot. So, it was year 2000. Then over the next few years, we were really kind of growing. We saw that this internet is becoming more and more popular. Talking to the employers, we saw initially they didn't recognize it. They had no clue that you can recruit people through the internet. Everyone was using Gazeta Praca. But with the time being, they started showing the results, which were basically people, job seekers, who were coming to our website and who were applying for their advertisements. And Pracuj.pl is a typical job classified, which is also a two-sided marketplace. So the more people are applying for the jobs, the more happy the employers are. The more happy employers are, the more jobs they post. The more jobs we have on the websites, the more people are coming and applying. So it's a little bit like a snowball effect, which is becoming bigger and bigger. But Pracuj.pl is something that we know from the beginning, but we also had publication about the postgraduate studies. Also for some time we published the publications for those who want to go to the university. So we pretty much tested everything which was possible to get the money from. But at some point, as always, you have to focus and you have to decide which path you are going to follow. So then the next years came. In 2006, we bought Robota UA in Ukraine. Anyone from Ukraine here? Surprisingly, nobody. So Robota was a very small project at the time. And we are there since 19 years. And this is the #1 website right now in Ukraine. As you can imagine, having better and worse times as well. In the meantime, in 2006, we got the first, let's say, proper VC investment from a company called Tiger Global, which is probably still one of the biggest funds. They were not so known at the time. That's why I talk about these rounds, that we got probably about 30 million zlotys investment, which was probably more than the entire investment mentioned here. So that was really super helpful for us. And they stayed with us for 10 years. In the meantime, we launched another, let's say, project or business called eRecruiter, which is basically the recruitment software. And then what we did in 2016 and 17 was, on one hand, we bought out Tiger Global because they had the investment horizon of 10 years. And we were, I think, 11 or 12 years in their portfolio. And then, what happened is that there was some, let's say, change of the government in Poland. Press started writing with lots of skepticism about the country, so we got a little bit scared, and we decided to go back to the kind of same river again. And some people say never do it, but we did because we had such a good experience with Tiger Global that we said, these VC guys, they're great, they are supportive, they are helpful. And I think to some extent they were, but they were also demanding. So I think the second journey with TCV was, let's say, more challenging because they have much more rights than Tiger. And so we then, in 2021, we decided to go public. And Grupa Pracuj became the public company in December 2021. A year later, we decided to go to the West. So we bought for 18 million euro. We bought the biggest recruitment software in Germany and in DACH called Softgarden, which took us 3 years of transformation and integration, our first proper acquisition. And then just like a few weeks ago, we just bought another company called Kadromierz. So where we are right now, of course I could talk about this for hours, but I know that we have time limit. So we are the HR tech leader in Europe. We have people from 20 nationalities working for us. We have, I think, 1,148 employees working for the group. 65% of them in Poland, but we have also 250 people in Kiev, and we have 200 people working in Berlin and Saarbrücken, which is closer to the border with France. Maybe just a few thoughts, except I hope you will all know that, always if we fight with that we are Grupa Pracuj, not Pracuj.pl or Grupa Pracuj.pl, we are just Grupa Pracuj, and this is a few brands, because not many people know about this. And I think the reason for that is Pracuj.pl is such a strong brand that people don't really see the other ones. But this is our path for the future, to grow as the HR tech leader. But I wanted to share a couple of thoughts about what potentially made us so successful. I don't think they are very innovative. And they come actually, all of them surprisingly come from one book. Not sure anyone has read Good to Great? No. Really? Okay. I think maybe right now there are just different books, like about, modern times. But the book which was actually our Bible in Grupa Pracuj is a book called Good to Great, written by a gentleman called Jim Collins. So he wrote good to great, then he wrote great by choice. It was, I got them, probably around 2006, 2007. So they seem ancient already. But a couple of thoughts, it's a couple of learnings which in some way shaped the way how we grew the company. The first one, which is actually quite difficult for many founders, is about getting the right people on the bus, and what is even more important, getting the wrong people off the bus. I went through this myself because I had to change the people working with me, also parting the ways with the other co-founders who are still part of the Grupa Pracuj journey. But this is, I would say, the problem which I see in quite many companies which I invested in. So they might be great founders, they are the visionary, they can talk about the business, they can sell, but they really stick very strongly with the other co-founders because they are peers, they are friends, they like each other, and they would never do anything wrong to the other person. And so then I always recommend them to read the book. Some of them do and move on, some of them don't. Some of them still make it, but I would say that this is the first most important critical thing, because talents are everything, especially in the technology companies. And being able to let people go is super important skill. The second one is called Hedgehog concept. Hedgehog is jeż, teoria jeża. And it actually, when you see these three circles on the right, and we always, whenever we discuss the ideas in the early days and whenever we discuss it right now, we always ask those three questions. So the first question is, what are you deeply passionate about? You just have it in your, you just feel it, right? Is it technology, or is it maybe some service or production? It can be probably different thing. Maybe Ukraine, maybe defense. The second question is what you can be the best in the world at. I would say it doesn't have to be the word. It can be in Poland, it can be in Estonia, it can be maybe in a certain town, depending on what kind of business you are running as well. And the third one, which people forget, is what drives your economic engine. So are you, at the end of the day, can you make money out of that? And what Jim Collins was saying, that the best companies in the world, because his book, what I like about the book is that this is really based on a very deep search of hundreds of different companies, public companies, which over a longer period of time were sustaining the growth. And that was also the second thing which he discovered. So he said those companies, they usually focus on this kind of cross-section of those three circles. And this is what we always try to do, because if you know where you are playing, even more importantly, you know where you are not playing. And lots of people, lots of businesses, they do everything. And I think, if you are able to cut off 20, 30, 50, 80% of the things that you are thinking about, that makes you sharp focused and just, move on. I'm not saying that it has been done from the first moment, because as you notice, when we started, it took us years to understand what is our business model and that we are going to bet on Pracuj PL. But at the moment we knew it, we just moved on and we put 120% of the resources on the core. The third one is the facing brutal facts. And this is, another thing which distinguishes great companies from the good companies. And but in order to see the brutal facts, you need to have the data. So what we do in Grupa Pracuj, every day we collect the information, and every month, we are sitting together with our leadership team, and we just look at the pure data, which is the numbers of the users, employers, revenues, profits, etc. Because finally the numbers speak. And then we talk with the businesses. And I know that sometimes, some people, they have the tendency maybe to avoid some difficult topics. But I think in the business, you just need to, when you see it, just go deeper and just try to understand, what is happening there as well. So this is the third, let's say, lesson. And the fourth one, which we, kind of always like, is something called 20 Miles March. So in his second book, Jim Collins was saying that he was actually giving the example of a person who is going through the US from the most southern west part of the US to the most kind of, east-north part. And he was saying that, the best strategy to go through is not to go, like, say, one day 50 miles, another one 10 miles. It's just to go like regular 20 miles, 20 miles, 20 miles. So then he was saying, find something which will tell you that you are going to have your kind of long-term sustainable merge. And that's what we're always, kind of trying to do. And that's why probably Grupa Pracuj is where we are at the moment, being a public company with so many people, and being one of the first unicorns out of Poland. So I guess that's it from my side. I don't know, maybe we have time for 1 or 2 questions if anyone would like to maybe share something or maybe ask something. No? Okay, so thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the conference as well. Thank you.